Hey, my friends, welcome back. Tonight, you're walking through a sun drenched meadow somewhere near ancient Sicily. The air smells like wild thyme and overripe nectarines. Bees are doing their lazy figure eights over dandelions, and everything is so outrageously peaceful that it's suspicious. You're tagging along with a young goddess named Persephone, who's wandering a little too far from home, snipping flowers like she's the chillest kid in Olympus. Spoiler alert, she is not. You probably won't survive this, not because of any underworld drama yet, but because the gentle boredom of flower picking under a Mediterranean sky might actually lull you into the kind of sleep that makes you forget your own name. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is there. Let's see how globally sleepy we can get. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trail behind Persephone as she steps barefoot through grass that somehow manages to be both perfectly golden and vaguely overgrown. She hums to herself, something tuneless, probably ancient pop. Her hands are full of narcissus and crocus blossoms, but she's reaching for another. Always another. The gods gave her everything, but even immortals fall for the myth of just one more flower. And here's your first good old historical anchor. The Greeks weren't subtle about their nature metaphors. Wildflowers represented fleeting beauty, youth, and a little bit of danger. In myth, picking the wrong bloom almost always meant something bad was about to happen. If someone in a myth says, "Wait, I just want to grab that flower real quick," you run. This is exactly what happens. The earth rumbles softly. You glance at Persephone, and she doesn't even flinch. She's already half bent toward a daffodil that's glowing like it owes someone rent. She plucks it, and the ground opens up, like literally splits. No warning, no dramatic music, just whump. Enter Hades. Yes, that Hades, god of the underworld, chariot driving, helmet wearing, eternally misunderstood goth uncle of Olympus. He rises out of the crevice like the most dramatic elevator you've ever seen. His horses snort smoke. His cloak does that cinematic whoosh thing. He looks entirely too well rested for someone who manages eternal souls. Persephone stands still, blinking at him. It's hard to say whether she's confused or intrigued, or just, over it. She's a goddess, sure, but she's also at that age where every major life choice feels like something your parents are going to have opinions about. Now here's your quirky nugget of weird myth trivia. Some versions of the story suggest that the earth itself, possibly with help from Zeus, was in on the kidnapping, like Yes Queen, but also betrayed by dirt. That's a level of passive-aggressive ambush that really deserves its own genre. And historians still argue whether this abduction was meant to be taken literally, like full-on snatch and grab, or if it was an allegory all along. Maybe it symbolized marriage, maybe it was about adolescence, or maybe Hades was just really, really bad at introductions. Either way, the meadow is empty now. Persephone's gone, the chasm's closed, and all that's left is a single fallen petal drifting gently to the earth. Back on Olympus, no one notices yet. The gods are probably bickering about something unimportant, like whose turn it is to stir the ambrosia. But down here, the earth has already started holding its breath. You sit in the tall grass, watching the wildflowers sway, knowing the world has shifted, but very, very quietly. You're still in the meadow, but the wind feels different now. Heavier, less picnic and pan flute, more brace yourself. The grass lies flatter, and even the bees seem to have filed for emotional leave. Because where Persephone once stood with a crown of blooms, there's now just a faint, sulfur smudged divot in the earth. The ground closed over her, like a secret it plans never to share. Down below, things are less sunny. You're in the underworld now. It's not as dramatic as you expected. No flaming rivers or endless screams. More like the world's oldest subway station, eternally dim, echoey, and decorated in that trendless gray that never quite goes out of style. And there's Hades again, helping Persephone out of his chariot, like he didn't just commit mythological kidnapping 5 minutes ago. This is the part where you realize the gods were always a little extra. And by extra, we mean dramatic entrances, wild chariots, and a firm belief in not using front doors. Here's your historical fact to anchor the descent. In many versions of Greek mythology, the underworld was less fiery doom and more bureaucratic mist. It had layers, regions, and rules. Elysium for the heroes, the Asphodel Meadows for the average Joe, and Tartarus for the real problem cases. And Hades? He wasn't the devil. He was the administrator, the eternal HR rep of the afterlife. Now, for your fringe fact, the chariot Hades used to abduct Persephone was supposedly pulled by black immortal horses, which, okay, very metal, but also ancient texts suggest they could fly, vanish, and possibly even shift between realms. Basically, the first cosmic Uber. 1 star for kidnapping, though. Historians still argue whether this underworld journey was ever meant to be literal. Some say the myth represents a seasonal planting cycle, Persephone going underground like a seed. Others suggest it's about the female experience in patriarchal societies. And still others think it's just a deeply weird way of explaining why nothing grows in February. Persephone walks through the halls now, barefoot on polished obsidian floors. It's not that she's calm, she's just adjusting, fast, like someone realizing their summer vacation just turned into an internship they never applied for. Hades, for all his underworld gravitas, is awkward. He offers her a throne. She glances at it like it's the last seat on a crowded bus. He clears his throat, mentions she can decorate the place if she wants, maybe put up some ivy, add color, girl things. There are no clocks here, but time feels strange. It stretches and loops, like a dream you can't quite wake from. And Persephone starts to feel it. Her mood dips, not a sharp plummet, more like a slow drift into that blank, cloudy state you get when you've stayed indoors too long. The underworld has that effect, even with all the quartz and dimly lit ambiance. She walks the halls, sits beside rivers where souls pass by like low murmurs. Tries to remember the smell of jasmine. It's like reaching for sunlight through water. Back above, nothing blooms. Meanwhile, Hades tries to be a good host. He sends spirits to fetch her ambrosia, commissions a lyre concert in her honor. Once, he even orders the palace dogs to do a trick, which ends with one of them chasing its tail through a hallway wall. The effort is there. The charm? Questionable. But Persephone isn't screaming. She isn't fighting. She's fading, and the earth notices. Quietly, yes, but unmistakably. Trees don't bother budding. Fields go crusty and dry. Birds nest, but don't sing. It's like the whole world is sighing through its teeth. You sit beside Persephone as she watches shadows drift across the stone. Her eyes aren't empty, they're reflective, thoughtful. She's changing, slowly, quietly, and in a way that seasons the entire world. She doesn't know it yet, but this disappearance will be the start of something massive, myth making, weather shifting, mood defining. She's not just gone, she's going somewhere else, within herself. The daffodils above the earth wait, unopened, and the first seed of the seasonal mood swing is planted deep below in silence. The days above grow stranger without her. You can feel it in the soil, in the sigh of every withered tree, in the way the sunlight seems to fall with less enthusiasm, like even the sun is on strike. Crops shrivel, the air dries. Somewhere in a grain field, a farmer mutters, "This feels personal," and honestly, it kind of is. Because back on Olympus, Demeter has noticed. Your historical fact tonight: Demeter wasn't just the goddess of agriculture, she was agriculture. Every sprout, every stalk, every loaf of barley bread depended on her moods, and right now, her mood is vengeance baked into drought, because someone has taken her daughter, and she's not just mad, she's withholding. Demeter wanders the earth disguised as an old woman, which is how gods usually roll when they're in a dramatic funk. She visits cities, asks questions, eyes every cave and crevice like someone looking for lost keys but knowing they were stolen. Her feet grow dusty, her cloak frays, and the weather continues to spiral into something best described as agriculturally passive aggressive. Now here's your fringe detail. There's a myth where Demeter, still in disguise, gets offered hospitality by a royal family. She tries to immortalize their baby by setting him on fire, gently, and when she's stopped, she's so annoyed that she builds a temple and starts a religion instead, which is such an intense emotional pivot. Historians still argue whether Demeter's grief was meant to explain famine cycles or serve as a warning about divine boundaries. Don't mess with a mother goddess, they say, or at least don't interrupt her when she's mid-immortality ritual. Either way, her sorrow scorched the land long before climate change was trending. She searches high and low, but nobody admits to seeing Persephone. No one wants to tell her that the ground itself split open and swallowed her kid like a bad punchline. The flowers have no comment. The wind plays dumb. Even Zeus, the king of the gods, the lightning guy, pretends not to know, which is wild considering some versions say he helped arrange the whole thing. Eventually, Demeter stops searching, not because she's tired, but because she decides to make her point in silence. She retreats to a cave and just stops. No crops, no harvest. The wheat folds in on itself like it can't go on. Oranges fall green and bitter. Goats give her the side eye. The earth begins to ache. Humans, meanwhile, start panicking. Sacrifices are offered. Prayers are shouted. There's talk of going full vegetarian. But nothing works. Because this isn't just a missing daughter. It's a goddess's heartbreak echoing through every field and orchard. And it works. Eventually, the cries of hungry mortals drift up to Olympus, and Zeus realizes he might need to fix things, probably because the prayers are getting specific. Dear Zeus, I can't grind flour out of rocks. And that's not the kind of PR the king of Olympus enjoys. So, with the energy of someone trying to reverse a very bad group text, Zeus sends Hermes down to the underworld to negotiate, which is really just Olympus speak for go ask your spooky uncle if he'll give back the girl before everything dies. Back in the underworld, Persephone is adapting. She walks the endless stone halls now, not with fear, but with familiarity. She still misses sunlight, but her spine is straighter, her gaze a little sharper. She's learning names, listening. Her moods, once soft and drifting like pollen, are coalescing into something queen-like. You catch her standing near the river Lethe, watching souls sip forgetfulness. She doesn't join them. She remembers everything, every petal, every silence, every day without her mother. And it changes her, not all at once, but gradually, like a winter that sneaks in before the last leaf falls. The underworld doesn't drain her. It sculpts her. And just before Hermes arrives, she plucks a fruit from a shadowy tree, a pomegranate, red like blood, glossy as myth. She turns it in her hand. She thinks about choices, about time, about how sometimes change isn't forced, it's swallowed. She lifts the fruit, takes a bite. Above, the wind stills. In a grove, a seed stirs. And Demeter? She's still in her cave, still grieving, but the earth knows something has shifted, just slightly, like the first crack of spring in frozen soil. Persephone isn't lost anymore. She's beginning. Somewhere between shadow and torchlight, Hermes arrives, gliding into the underworld like he's just here to drop off a scroll and maybe dodge some awkward family tension. His sandals barely make a sound, and his helmet glints like he borrowed it from someone far more punctual. But even he can't quite hide the look that says, I've been sent to fix something way above my pay grade. Your historical fact for tonight. Hermes was the designated divine messenger, a god who could travel between worlds, from Olympus to Earth to the underworld. He was the only one who could slip between realms without causing earthquakes or existential dread. Think divine FedEx, but with better sandals and way more passive-aggressive missions. And your strange but true tidbit, some versions of the myth say Hermes brought a bouquet with him. Yes, a literal peace offering from Demeter to Persephone, as if flowers were going to fix everything, which is bold considering the last flower Persephone picked got her into this mess. Historians still argue whether Hermes was a neutral negotiator or just running errands for Zeus without asking too many questions. Was he an advocate for Persephone's freedom, or just another god keeping the celestial HR department from total collapse? You walk with him now through corridors of deep stone, past columns etched with the names of those long forgotten. Shadows cling to the walls like old regrets, and the air tastes like metal and endings. But Hermes walks like none of that matters. He's been here before. He knows the way to the throne room, and more importantly, he knows how to stay polite in the house of Hades. When he arrives, Persephone is already there, seated, poised, regal. She doesn't rise when he enters. She doesn't run to him. She just lifts her gaze slowly as if to say, I've been expecting you. She's not the girl who picked wildflowers anymore. She's something else now, still growing, still blooming, but with roots that now reach into shadow. Hermes explains the deal. Demeter's grief is unraveling the world. The earth is folding in on itself, and humanity is one missed harvest away from rebranding as an extinction event. Zeus, magnanimous and self preserving as ever, has decided that Persephone must return. She listens, doesn't blink, doesn't breathe deeply, just nods, slow and unreadable. And then Hades speaks. His voice is low, like gravel soaking in water. He says she is free to leave if she hasn't eaten anything in the underworld, because that's the law. Eat nothing, and you're a visitor. Eat something, and you're a resident. A very poetic kind of food-based immigration policy. Persephone reaches into her lap and lifts the pomegranate rind, now hollowed, its juices dark on her fingers. She has eaten. Not much, just a few seeds, 6 to be precise. And here's where myth turns into negotiation. The gods, in their infinite complexity, decide on a compromise. Persephone will spend part of the year with her mother, above ground, where flowers bloom and rivers sing. The rest, she'll return to Hades, ruling the underworld not as a captive, but as queen. 6 seeds, 6 months. Above, Demeter feels the change before she hears the news. Something eases in the sky. A warm breath returns to the soil. Crops sigh like they're waking from a bad dream. The world is about to green again. You ride with Persephone now, rising slowly from the underworld in a chariot of dark glass and ghostlight. The earth opens once more, and the light spills in, not with shock, but with relief. Grass uncurls. Birds remember how to sing. Somewhere a farmer blinks and says, "About time." When mother and daughter reunite, there are no fireworks, no booming music, just the quiet thud of hearts trying not to break all over again. Demeter holds Persephone like she might vanish, and Persephone lets herself be held. But her eyes carry something new now, depth, distance, and the weight of someone who's lived in both bloom and shadow. There's celebration. Of course there is. People rejoice. Temples fill with offerings. Fields erupt in color. But even in the joy, there's a quiet understanding that isn't forever. Persephone will leave again, and the earth will follow her mood. She is now the hinge of the seasons, the reason things grow, then fall, then wait. Her story is not just myth, it's calendar, it's emotion. It's every time you feel the shift in the air and wonder if something deep inside you is also changing. She didn't ask for it, but she owns it now. And the world has never stopped turning with her. The earth has burst back into color. You walk through orchards practically glowing with green, blossoms flinging themselves into bloom like they've been holding their breath for 6 months straight. Bees reapply for their jobs. Wheat stretches lazily toward the sun. Even the olives look smug. And at the center of it all is Persephone, freshly returned, eyes brighter, smile slower, arms still damp with underworld gravity. Here's your crisp historical fact. The ancient Greeks didn't just invent seasonal myths, they lived by them. Persephone's comings and goings were tied to the agricultural calendar. Her return signaled planting time. Her descent marked the dry months, the season when seeds rested and the ground lost its generosity. Now, for your curious little twist, not all versions agree on the number of months Persephone spent away. Some say 4, some 6, some, boldly, say she came and went whenever she pleased, which feels deeply on brand for a goddess who once looked death in the eye and said, "Sure, I'll redecorate." Historians still argue whether the myth's timing matched actual seasonal shifts in ancient Greece, or if it was more about emotional truth than meteorological precision. Was it a literal farming almanac, or just a poetic way of saying, hey, some parts of the year feel like they last forever? You sit beneath a fig tree now, the shade warm, the breeze gossiping through the leaves. Persephone passes nearby, her footsteps soft but definite. She's not floating, she's not lost. She walks like someone who's chosen to return, who knows she'll leave again, but right now she's here, fully. Demeter shadows her, of course. You can't blame her, she's been through it. And now that her daughter is back, she's in full bloom mode. Every garden sprouts twice as high. The barley fields throw a full body celebration. Somewhere in a village, a baker opens their shutters and weeps openly at the sudden abundance of rye. Demeter is radiant, yes, but also anxious. She knows this is temporary. She knows Persephone carries the underworld with her now, like a folded map tucked inside her chest. But for now, they walk together. They laugh. They plant things. The land listens, grateful. And the humans? They feel it too. Their bones thaw. Their moods lift. Some throw festivals. Others just clean their homes and stand in the doorway like they're trying to inhale spring directly into their lungs. You watch as people leave small offerings near sacred groves, wheat stalks, honey cakes, bowls of pomegranate seeds they don't eat just to be safe. No one wants to get accidentally drafted into seasonal metaphors. Even animals get it. Lambs prance like they know they're part of a myth. Birds build nests with extra flair. The natural world practically curtsies every time Persephone walks past. And you notice something subtle. She doesn't rush. She touches leaves slowly, lets sun rest on her skin like a new language. When someone offers her wine, she accepts, but only sips. When a child hands her a bouquet, she smiles like it's the first flower she's ever seen. But the joy? It's laced with awareness, not dread, just knowing. A kind of grace only someone who's lived in stillness can understand. She's not running from the underworld. She's not pretending it didn't happen. She's just above now, and that's enough. As the season continues, the world pulses with life. Trees flower, rivers run clear, people fall in love like it's a group assignment. Everything is awake. But beneath it all, you feel the soft tick of time passing, the knowing glances between mother and daughter, the occasional breeze that smells faintly of stone and shadow, the unspoken truth that bloom and wither are sisters. And Persephone? She belongs to both. You lie back in the grass, full of sunlight and the faint buzz of bees. You've never felt so relaxed. But deep down, you know, the next shift is coming. Not yet, but soon. Time passes the way it does in myths, fluid, slow, then suddenly all at once. 1 minute, you're barefoot in fields, bursting with wildflowers. The next, you're noticing how the sun takes just a little longer to rise. The birds sing, yes, but with less conviction. The green fades, almost politely, like someone excusing themselves from a party that's gone on too long. And you're still following Persephone. Her steps are quieter now. The breeze around her feels heavier. Somewhere the pomegranates are starting to ripen. Here's your core historical fact tonight. The Greeks divided the year into seasons that mirrored Persephone's journey. Spring and summer were her time above ground, autumn and winter, her return below. This wasn't just a story, they used it to mark planting, harvest, rest. Life didn't just happen to them, it cycled like she did. Now, for your quirky kernel of mythic weirdness. Some sources suggest that each seed of the pomegranate she ate in the underworld represented a month she had to spend there. So if she had eaten three, just 3 months of darkness. But she ate six, or possibly four, or maybe all of them, depending on which poet you ask. Either way, it's fruit logic meets divine consequence. Historians still argue whether this specific fruit was chosen for its symbolism, fertility, death, rebirth, or because it stains dramatically and looks cool in frescoes. Some say Persephone's choice was metaphorical. Others insist she was tricked, and a few whisper she knew exactly what she was doing. Right now, she walks through orchards, turning gold at the edges. The apples are ripe. The figs sag with sweetness. Everything's a little too lush, like the world is trying to soak up her presence before it has to let go again. Demeter pretends she isn't watching, but you can feel her tension. Her gardens grow more erratically. Some areas bloom twice as fast, others stall completely. It's like even the goddess of harvest can't decide how to feel. You pass villagers who glance toward the horizon, sensing a shift in the air. People start to prepare, not panicking, just slowing. They sweep out storage rooms, preserve fruits, count grain. There's a quiet that settles in places once full of noise. Not sorrow, not yet. Just stillness. And Persephone? She smiles less, but she doesn't seem sad. She's reflective, serene, a woman walking towards something inevitable and not fearing it. You see her reach down and touch the dry grass, whispering to it like she's apologizing, or maybe just saying goodbye. You sit beneath an olive tree as leaves flutter down like ancient confetti. Someone offers you a pear, freshly picked. It tastes like late summer, sweet, but with an edge. You chew slowly, watching as a breeze lifts Persephone's hair and the last rose on the bush behind her withers on cue. She turns to you, eyes soft, and says nothing. She doesn't need to. You both feel it. That subtle click in the myth's machinery. The descent is coming. And so begins the first of the 6. The chariot arrives at dusk. It always does. The horses paw at the earth like they already miss her. Hades waits, quiet, composed, offering her a hand, not dragging her this time, not demanding, just offering. Demeter stands nearby, back rigid, jaw tight. Oh, she doesn't cry. Not in front of witnesses. She simply nods, a contract honored, a daughter shared. Persephone climbs into the chariot. 1 step, 2. She doesn't look back, not because she doesn't care, but because she knows she'll return. The myth is written. The path is hers now. You stand in the settling twilight, watching the chariot sink into the earth like a star being swallowed. The fields hold their breath. Somewhere, a single leaf falls, and the world goes quiet again. 6 months up, 6 months down. You wake to a hush that feels deeper than silence. No birds, no bees, no rustle of leaves pretending they're dancing in the wind. Just stillness. The kind of stillness that makes you wonder if the world forgot to hit resume. Persephone is below again. Above ground, The earth has shifted into something quieter, more restrained. Crops still grow, but slower. The color drains from the fields like someone turned down the saturation. The sky feels heavier, the air more introspective. It's not lifeless, it's just waiting. Here's your grounding historical fact. In ancient Greece, agricultural cycles weren't just timed to the seasons, they were given personality. Spring and summer were active, joyful, social. Autumn and winter, reserved, still productive, but with an energy that pulled inward. It made emotional sense to people because they were living in Persephone's rhythm. And here's your quirky nugget. Some folks in rural Greece kept local calendars based on lunar phases and mythic moments. They tracked Persephone's comings and goings, not with modern dates, but with moods, crop health, and changes in light. If your garden started pouting and your goat stared off into space more than usual, time to mark the descent. Historians still argue whether these seasonal interpretations were fully religious or just cozy ways of assigning cosmic meaning to what was already happening. Were people worshiping Persephone or just vibing with her? Honestly, same. You wander through a village now where the pace of life has downshifted. Markets still open, but they're quieter. Fewer jokes, more nods. The bread's a little denser, the olives a little sharper. People wear more layers, not just for warmth, but for comfort, like emotional sweaters. Children ask questions about where Persephone is now. Parents give vague answers. She's resting, they say. She's helping things below. The truth is, they don't fully know. But the myth makes the waiting feel bearable, like someone pressed pause, but only temporarily. And inside homes, things shift too. Lamps burn longer, meals stretch out slower, conversations take on that cozy, sleepy cadence where everyone talks about how early it feels, even if it's barely past dinner. Persephone, far below, sits on her throne. Yes, throne. Because down here she's not just a visitor, she's a ruler. A queen with shadow under her fingernails and pomegranate stain in her smile. The underworld hasn't dimmed her. It's refined her, sharpened her like obsidian. She listens to the souls passing through. She guides. She doesn't always speak, but when she does, the walls of the underworld lean in to hear it. Even Hades steps back a little. This isn't the Persephone he pulled from a meadow. This is someone who can stay 6 months in the dark and still return brighter. You sit beside her now, watching spirits drift like fog across a moonless plain. Some whisper, some wail, most are quiet. They're not scared of her. They're steadied by her. She knows both bloom and decay. She speaks both fluently. And the earth above leans toward sleep. Some say it's sadness. That winter is Demeter mourning again. But others, those who've lived enough seasons, say it's rest, a lull, a natural dip in the emotional tide. Persephone is not gone. She's just away. And the world is catching its breath. You pass a tree where the last orange clings to a naked branch. Below it, frost dusts the soil like powdered sugar. A rabbit stares at you for a long moment, then ducks back into its burrow. Even the animals seem to know what time it is. In a temple near the edge of a village, an old priest places dried lavender on a stone altar. He doesn't say much, just bows his head and mutters something about balance, about cycles, about how even goddesses need time off. And you sit quietly, feeling it too, that bone-deep shift, that seasonal slump, that cosmic melancholy that says yes, Things are fading, but they'll come back. They always do, because Persephone's not trapped. She's just pacing the year. You exhale slowly. There's no rush. You've got 6 months. The underworld isn't all gloom and ghost breath, you realize. It has its own rhythm, a different kind of beauty, like moonlight on obsidian or the way candlelight reflects in still water. It's not lively, no, but it is alive, in its own steady, strange way. You follow Persephone through its halls now, and something's changed. She's not just drifting through this place like a bored goddess on an extended visit. She's commanding it, slowly, subtly, and with zero fanfare. Her back is straight. Her voice, when she uses it, makes walls listen. Here's your historical fact of the night. Over time, Persephone wasn't just remembered as the kidnapped daughter or the seasonal commuter. She became queen of the underworld in her own right, ruler, judge, decider of fate. She stood beside Hades, not behind him. Some even say souls approached her first, not him. There's power in return journeys. Now for your offbeat gem. Some versions of the myth suggest Persephone instituted rules in the underworld, boundaries, structure, maybe even a filing system. She didn't just sit on a throne looking fabulous in bone jewelry. She managed, delegated, probably had a to-do list scratched into limestone. The goddess of seasonal mood swings also became goddess of order in the shadows. Historians still argue whether Persephone's transformation was a cultural evolution, an empowering arc added later to give her more agency, or whether it was always there, just overshadowed by the more dramatic parts of her story. Did she grow into this role, or were we just too distracted by the chariot abduction to notice? Down here, though, it's obvious. She's walking through chambers with columns so ancient they hum, passing judges of the dead who stand when she enters. Shades bow, Furies nod, even Cerberus, the giant three-headed dog who usually requires a bribe or threat, just lies down politely as she approaches. You trail her through quiet judgment halls, where decisions are made about where souls go next. Not punishment, not reward, just placement, like a cosmic library. Persephone's hand hovers over each choice, like she's weighing it on scales only she can read. And here's something else. She's different down here, not colder, just more focused. Her voice is still soft, but there's steel underneath it. Her laughter, rare as it is, echoes through the stone like it belongs there, like it always did. Back on the surface, people sense this shift, though they don't understand it. They light winter fires, they bake darker breads, they wrap themselves in wool and wonder why the stars feel heavier. But no one panics. They know this part of the cycle. They can almost feel Persephone working, shaping, settling the unseen. In villages, the women start telling different versions of her myth. Not just the tale of a girl stolen away, but of a woman who made the underworld her domain, who went somewhere terrifying and made it livable, who didn't just wait for spring, but created the pause that makes spring possible. And you're sitting in her garden now. Yes, she has one. It's underground, but it grows. Fungi bloom in intricate spirals. Ghost orchids glow faintly. There's a tree here that bears fruit only in dreams, and another that drips with silver sap that smells like forgotten lullabies. She tends it all herself. No servants, just quiet focus, like trimming vines in silence is its own kind of prayer. You watch her pick a glowing fruit, not a pomegranate this time, but something pale and crescent shaped. She bites slowly. She's not trying to forget the world above. She's just tasting the one she's helped build here. You realize now that she's not divided. She's doubled, both the light and the dark, both the bloom and the fall. She's the personification of the feeling you get when you first smell rain on dry ground, hope tangled with memory. And the underworld, it responds to her, warms slightly, not physically. Nothing here is exactly warm, but energetically. The kind of warmth that comes from being known. 6 months might not seem long to a god, but she fills them completely. And somewhere, high above, a seed stirs beneath frost. You climb slowly, gently, back toward the surface, though not with your feet, not physically. It's more like your spirit leans upward, drawn by that soft upward tug of light, trying to peek through winter's sleep. Somewhere far above, the air is warming. Somewhere sap is stirring in the trees. And guess who's behind that? Yep, she's on the move again. Demeter feels it first. She always does. Here's your grounded historical fact. The ancient Greeks believed that Persephone's rise from the underworld marked the return of fertility to the land. It wasn't metaphor, it was agriculture 101 with divine flair. Persephone comes back. The ground remembers how to grow things again. Coincidence? Not in myth. And your odd, delightful tidbit? The Eleusinian mysteries, those famous secret rituals honoring Demeter and Persephone, were said to offer participants secret knowledge about the afterlife. You know, no big deal. Just a casual enlightenment package bundled with your seasonal planting festival. Details of those rites are still, well, a mystery. But we know this. They centered around Persephone's descent and return. Her cycle was the sacred text. Historians still argue whether Persephone's myth was originally agricultural, spiritual, or psychological. Did the Greeks build farming practices around her, or did they build her myth around their farming practices? Chicken, egg, seed, pomegranate, it's hard to tell. Now here's where things get interesting. You're in a field not blooming yet, but softened. The frost has melted into dew. The soil smells like it might try something soon. And the farmers? They're watching the horizon like it owes them a prophecy. No one says her name, but they all feel it. Demeter walks these fields in early spring, her fingers grazing the tips of last year's husks. Her expression is unreadable, hopeful, guarded. You know she wants to believe this time Persephone might return early, stay longer, not feel the pull downward again. And then the moment comes. You don't see Persephone arrive, not exactly. She's just suddenly here, standing at the edge of the grove, where the sunlight filters in like golden thread. Her hair carries the scent of moss and iron, and her eyes catch the light in a way that makes the sky blink. No announcement, no trumpets, just presence. The earth exhales. Demeter rushes forward, and for a heartbeat the world tilts. Trees lean, rivers hum, a hawk circles overhead and suddenly remembers how to sing. The embrace is quiet, but seismic. The kind of hug that says, "You're whole again, but I missed your shadow." This return isn't as loud as the first one. It's slower, wiser. There's less celebration and more grounding. A woman coming home, not to escape, but to restore. Persephone walks the fields, and seeds tremble in their shells like they've just heard their name. Buds swell, roots reawaken. People kneel beside their gardens and murmur prayers they didn't know they still remembered. In towns, festivals begin to form, imperfect, joyful, rooted in chaos and baking mishaps. Bread is braided, lanterns are lit, girls dance barefoot with wreaths in their hair. No one says Persephone is back out loud, but you hear it in every laugh, every flute note, every whispered thanks. You follow her as she walks through a grove where the fruit trees haven't bloomed in months. She touches one trunk gently, and a single blossom unfolds. She doesn't smile, not exactly, but her eyes soften, like someone who knows she'll leave again. But right now, she's exactly where she needs to be. And you realize something, quietly, deeply. Her power isn't just in returning, it's in making the world worth returning to. You lie back on the grass that was barren just days ago, feeling it press warm and alive beneath your palms. The sky above is starting to tint blue. Somewhere in the distance, a shepherd whistles, and a goat pretends not to listen. Everything is coming back to life, but slowly, gently, season by season, step by step. Because Persephone isn't racing the calendar, she's setting it. You wake to the sound of bells, soft ones, clinking together in the breeze, like they're not trying to get anyone's attention, just reminding you that time is a circle and festivals are, in fact, happening. You're in a village now, where everyone's preparing for a celebration so old no one remembers how it started. Just that it begins when Persephone returns, and everyone suddenly gets the urge to bake bread shaped like spirals. Here's your grounded historical fact. The return of Persephone was celebrated in spring festivals across Greece, most famously in the Eleusinian Mysteries, but also in smaller local ceremonies. These were part sacred ritual, part emotional reset button. They marked not just the coming of crops, but the lifting of something heavier, the psychic weight of winter. And for your little fringe delight, some communities offered Persephone freshly cut flowers and pomegranate juice not as a welcome back, but as a little wink. Thanks for coming, but maybe skip the seeds this time. It's half prayer, half passive-aggressive hospitality. Historians still argue whether these festivals were more about Demeter's joy or Persephone's growth. Was it the mother's relief, or the daughter's return, or both tangled into a floral wreath of seasonal symbolism? Honestly, pick a scroll and you'll get a different opinion. Right now, in this village, it's more practical. People are decorating, kids are weaving garlands, someone's roasting chickpeas, and no one seems to know why, but it smells incredible. Women carry bowls of barley and dried figs to a small altar at the center of town, an offering to Persephone. She doesn't ask for much, just presents, a little recognition, maybe a fruit tray with symbolic resonance. You walk past a group of older men painting symbols on clay pots, sun spirals, sheaves of wheat. One paints a woman rising from a crack in the ground, her arms raised, her hair full of flowers. No one says it's Persephone, but it's Persephone. And the mood? It's light, not loud, not chaotic, just hopeful, like everyone's exhaling at the same time, glad to be alive again. Even the goats seem to be behaving. Mostly. The high priestess of this village steps into the square. She's old but steady, with hair braided in coils like winter never happened. She lights a small flame and says a prayer to both Persephone and Demeter. One for return, one for growth, or one for light, one for everything that learned to live in the dark. Then there's music, soft flutes, drums that sound like heartbeat echoes, dancers, mostly young girls, circle the altar, stepping slowly, then faster, mimicking cycles, mimicking the spin of the seasons. One girl stumbles and laughs, and the entire crowd claps like she invented joy. No one needs it to be perfect. That's not the point. The point is that things move again. And Persephone? She's not here in person, but she's everywhere. In the blooming almond trees, in the wildflower path that suddenly appeared behind the granary, in the way the baker's dough rose too fast this morning, like it couldn't wait to become bread. Later, when the music slows and the stars peek out, people sit around small fires. They tell stories. Not all of them are accurate. Some are half remembered. Some are clearly made up. But every story has a woman in it who disappears and comes back wiser, or quieter, or louder. Every story ends in spring. You lie in the grass, the firelight flickering against your closed eyes, and you hear someone ask softly, "Where does she go, really?" No one answers. Someone says, "She goes where she's needed." Someone else says, "She goes where we can't go." But the truth is, she goes where we are. Persephone doesn't just move through seasons, she moves through us. She's the ache of endings and the thrill of beginnings. She's the silence of winter and the noise of return. She's the goddess of growing things and the ruler of what waits underneath. And somehow, she's always right on time. The fire's embers are fading now, but your mind drifts onward, following the tendrils of myth the way smoke curls up into the stars. The stories about Persephone are still swirling in the air, light, layered, and wildly inconsistent. Which brings us to a surprising truth. Once the festivals quieted down and the songs stopped rhyming, the philosophers got involved. Time for your historical fact. Classical Greek thinkers, especially the ones who couldn't resist adding footnotes to other people's stories, started interpreting the Persephone myth through a more symbolic lens. They weren't content with flowers, chariot, fruit, return. They needed meaning, deep meaning, layered meaning, preferably with moral lessons and a sprinkle of cosmic truth. And here's your philosophical fringe fact. Plato himself, the guy with the cave and the allegory addiction, referenced Persephone in his writing. He suggested that her descent into the underworld symbolized the soul's journey into the body, and her return represented spiritual enlightenment or rebirth. Basically, he turned her myth into a self-help seminar for aspiring immortals. Historians still argue whether these philosophical reinterpretations were respectful homages or highbrow hijackings. Was Persephone's myth meant to be literal, metaphorical, seasonal, psychological, or some very Greek cocktail of all four, shaken with ice from the river Lethe? Tonight, though, you're eavesdropping on a different kind of gathering, a circle of scroll-hugging thinkers under a canopy of olive trees, arguing into the night. Their robes rustle, their voices rise and fall like ocean waves, and in the middle of it all, a clay tablet, etched with symbols of Demeter, Persephone, and a rather confused-looking pomegranate. One man insists Persephone is the soul. Another argues she's time itself. A third declares she represents womanhood in all its inescapable dualities. A fourth just wants to know what the pomegranate stands for, because he tried one once and chipped a tooth. You sit back, amused, as they debate the nature of descent. Is it punishment or transformation? Is darkness the absence of light or just another way to see? They cite Orphic texts. They quote hymns. Someone brings up reincarnation, and another insists this has nothing to do with karma and everything to do with land use. You half expect someone to invent therapy by accident, but even in their academic haze, they're not wrong. The myth of Persephone feels true on too many levels. We've all walked through seasons that swallowed us. We've all bitten into things that tasted like decisions. We've all disappeared a little and returned slightly different. One philosopher leans back and says, maybe it's not about where she goes. Maybe it's about how she comes back. Someone else adds, and maybe the world doesn't change because of her return. Maybe it waits for it. And just like that, the argument softens. They sip their wine. They stare at the sky. No one wins. No one needs to. Because myths aren't solved. They're sat with. You leave them there, mid-contemplation, mid-metaphor, mid-lifetime of trying to explain something that was never meant to be explained, just felt. You walk through quiet streets now, passing houses with wreaths on the doors and sleeping cats stretched like commas. The air is cooler, the moon is lower, and somewhere in the night you sense her again, not above or below, but everywhere, flickering at the edges of understanding, blooming quietly in the minds of anyone who ever asked, will things grow again? And even without an answer, you feel it. Yes, they will. The philosophers have fallen silent, finally, and their snores now blend with the rustling of wind through fig trees and the occasional yawn of the moon. But don't worry, the story's not finished. Because just as the Greeks were wrapping their myths in riddles and allegory, the Romans were copy-pasting. Here's your firm historical fact for this leg of the journey. When Rome absorbed Greek culture, they took a lot of the gods and gave them Latin names. Zeus became Jupiter, Hermes got rebranded as Mercury, and Persephone, she became Proserpina. Same story, new vowels. And for your delightful little twist, the Roman version of Persephone's tale took on a slightly different tone, less about the soul's transformation and more about imperial pageantry. In some adaptations, Proserpina becomes less of a co-ruler of the underworld and more of a porcelain hostage in a power struggle between deities, which is a little like turning a phoenix into a scented candle. Historians still argue whether the Romans misunderstood Persephone or if they reshaped her myth on purpose to match their own values, order, hierarchy, and emotional restraint. Where the Greeks saw seasons and duality, the Romans saw structure and sovereignty. It's like myth, but with marching orders. Tonight, you're walking the marble-paved streets of a Roman city under a sky just as star-streaked, but somehow less personal. Everything's grander here. Columns, temples, hairstyles, but a little more distant. You pass a statue of Proserpina, all curls and cold stone. A garland rests at her feet, slightly wilted. She's still worshipped. She's still known. But something's been softened. Her underworld edges sanded down to fit a new mold. You peek into a shrine where Roman matrons light candles and leave offerings, wheat, wine, pressed flowers. It's familiar, but the tone is different. More ceremonial, less intimate. You get the sense that they're honoring her because they should, not because they feel her. In the forum, two men argue. Yes, again. This time, not about metaphors, but about calendar logistics. The Vestal rites begin the moment Proserpina returns. One insists, the other waves him off. She's a symbol of grain, he says. It's not that deep. You want to shake them both and say, she's literally the seasons, but they're too busy reorganizing the myth into a bureaucratic spreadsheet. Still, beneath the surface, something old and original stirs. A woman kneels beside a tiny altar near the city wall. No temple, no ceremony, just a bowl of fruit and a whispered prayer. She calls her Persephone, not Proserpina. She says, "Welcome back," as if she's speaking to a friend, not a concept. And for a moment you feel the myth slip free from the marble. It breathes again, not as a Roman idol or a Greek allegory, but as the same girl who picked a flower once and fell into something deeper than anyone could explain. You walk through fields just beyond the Roman roads now, where farmers follow the seasons in quiet partnership. Their gods have new names, but the rhythm is the same. Plant when she rises, rest when she descends. Trust the cycle, even if you can't see its center. And in the distance, Persephone, no matter the name, smiles with the knowledge that she's still moving through time, through language, through people who don't even know they're following her. Because the truth is, you don't have to believe in her for her to work. She's not waiting for worship. She's already inside the rhythm of how the world lets go and grows again. You find yourself standing in the underworld again, not the shadowy halls Persephone once wandered as a guest, but the version where she reigns, where the walls lean in when she speaks, and the air smells faintly of iron and night-blooming flowers. And beside her, as always, is Hades. This is the part of the myth people like to argue about. Let's start with your clean-cut historical fact. Hades was never the Greek version of the devil. He wasn't evil, just absolute. He ruled the underworld, but he wasn't in charge of torment. That was other departments. Hades dealt with the dead, not with punishment. Think more emotionally unavailable administrator than cackling villain. And now, your quirky mythological morsel. In some versions of the myth, Hades actually asks Zeus for permission to marry Persephone. And Zeus, being Zeus, says yes without telling Demeter, which is like organizing a wedding and forgetting to invite the bride's mom. Or the bride. Historians still argue whether Hades genuinely loved Persephone, or whether he simply needed a co-ruler, someone to match his gravity. The earliest stories paint the abduction as cold and selfish. Later versions soften it into affection. Twisted, yes, but real. Some even suggest Persephone grew to love him, not because she was trapped, but because she changed, and because he did too. So here we are, in the deepest chamber of the underworld, Persephone on one throne, Hades on the other. No chains, no begging. Just two rulers who know the weight of their world. You sit nearby, not sure what to expect. Hades says little, he never does. But you notice the way he watches her, not like she's a trophy, but like she's the only thing he trusts to tell him the truth. And Persephone? She doesn't shrink beside him. She commands. She speaks to the dead. She manages the balance. She handles things he won't touch, not out of fear, but out of deference. She's not his shadow. She's his echo. And yet, the myth still holds tension. Was it a partnership? A kidnapping? a divine arranged marriage with a side of seasonal symbolism. People still debate this. They always will. Some say she was stolen. Others say she stayed by choice. Some say she was a victim. Others say she became a queen, so powerful she turned the realm of endings into something fertile. Maybe they're all right. Maybe none of them are. You walk through their palace now, quiet as dust. There are no screams, just footsteps. Braziers flicker low. Ghosts pass you with nods. The place runs like clockwork. A kingdom of rest, not rage. And in the center of it, Persephone moves like someone who belongs here, not just because she adapted, but because she claimed it. You watch as Hades hands her a scroll, something bureaucratic. He doesn't tell her what to do. He just passes it over and waits. She reads it, nods, signs it. No drama, no thrones rattling, just respect. There's a moment where they sit in silence, and it's not uncomfortable. It's steady. You realize then this might be love, not the warm, fluffy kind, but the kind that grows in shadow, where roots are deep and blooming takes time. Persephone stands, her cloak trailing like fog, and walks toward the entrance. Hades doesn't stop her. He doesn't ask her to stay. He just watches as she disappears into the upper world again, because he knows she'll come back. Not because she has to, but because it's hers. Above, the earth stirs once more. A petal opens. A frost lifts. And you start to think, maybe love isn't always about never leaving. Maybe it's about knowing when to return. You're back among the living now, sort of, above ground, but not exactly grounded. Because this part of the story doesn't live in temples or textbooks. It lives in people, modern people, you, me. That woman sipping tea while mood scrolling through weather apps. That guy crying into his February planner because he hasn't seen the sun since Tuesday. Yes, this is the part where Persephone becomes not just a myth, but a metaphor. Let's start with your classic historical note. Over time, as belief in the Greek gods faded and the old temples crumbled into expensive tourism sites, the myth of Persephone never really died. It shapeshifted. It survived. She slipped into art, poetry, psychology, therapy memes, and self-help monologues disguised as Instagram captions. And your fringe-worthy fact tonight? In some modern neo-pagan practices, Persephone is still actively honored, not just as a goddess of agriculture or death, but of personal transformation, shadow work, emotional cycles. She's the patron of figuring yourself out in stages. Historians still argue whether the modern takes on Persephone are faithful continuations or creative reimaginings. Is it cultural revival, rebranding, psychological projection wrapped in mythic chic? No one agrees. But the fact that we still care, that kind of speaks for itself. You're walking through a city now, modern, buzzing, low on sleep. It's spring, but the wind has commitment issues. People shuffle in and out of train stations, grocery stores, therapy appointments, and guess what? Persephone's here too. She's the college student buying tulips, even though rent is late. She's the woman who left a toxic job and started painting again. She's the tired guy who didn't cry all winter and then finally did because a certain song hit too hard. You see her in every small resurrection. Because today, the underworld isn't some chasm in Sicily. It's a depressive episode, a heartbreak, a season of loss. And Persephone? She's the part of you that comes back, not all at once, Maybe not confidently, but consistently. You sit on a park bench watching people pass, a teen with a buzz cut the color of blooming azaleas, a couple holding hands like they're trying to remember how, a jogger pausing to smell a flower, and not even in an ironic way. Everyone here is orbiting their own underworld. Some are rising, some are still sitting with the shadows, and that's okay, because Persephone doesn't rush the return. She waits. She understands timing. She knows what it's like to feel stuck and still be sacred. That blooming doesn't mean forgetting. That moving forward isn't the same as pretending it never happened. You pass a bookstore. In the window, there's a collection of poetry titled The Queen Below. The subtitle reads, Finding Light in the Deep Places. Inside, someone's reading it aloud to a half circle of strangers, each nodding softly like they've just been given permission to feel whatever this season needs them to feel. You keep walking. The city is full of tiny altars now, coffee cups beside crocuses, sidewalk chalk affirmations, unread journals reopened after months. People aren't worshiping, not in the old way, but they're remembering, reactivating, getting curious about what it means to come back from something. And Persephone? She's not jealous. She doesn't demand devotion. She's just there, in the atmosphere, in the way your breath gets a little deeper when you realize the cold is finally over. In the moment you wear short sleeves again and think, maybe I'll be okay after all. The myth still lives, not as a rule, but as a rhythm. Not as a story you have to believe, but one that gently taps your shoulder when the seasons shift. Because somewhere inside you, she's walking, up from the dark, into the light, and she's carrying everything she learned below. You're standing at the edge of something now, not a cliff or a doorway, but a feeling. The kind that says, we've been here before and we'll be here again. The myth is winding down, just like the seasons do, just like your breath does when the day ends and you finally remember how to be still. You look around. The earth is warm underfoot. Trees are leafing out again with that almost embarrassing eagerness. Bees hum like they've got somewhere to be. The sky is soft and wide, holding everything without comment. And somewhere just beyond your line of sight, Persephone walks among it all, home again. Here's your final grounded historical fact. For ancient Greeks, time wasn't a straight line. It was circular, rhythmic, repetitive, a spiral rather than a string. Life, death, rebirth, growth and harvest, rest. Persephone wasn't just a character, she was the rhythm, the ticking of mythic time, and your last delightfully odd detail. There were myths where Persephone wasn't just the queen of seasons, but of fate, of choosing when and where someone would be reborn. She didn't just move through cycles, she wrote them. Talk about leveling up. Historians still argue whether this made her terrifying or reassuring. A goddess who knows both the dark and the light and chooses to walk between them. Some say that's what makes her dangerous. Others say that's what makes her real. You sit down in a meadow, not unlike the one where this all began. The grass is a little taller, the wind a little wiser. Maybe the flowers remember, maybe they don't. But you do, because this isn't a story you just heard. It's one you've lived. Every time you pulled yourself out of something heavy. Every time you felt winter end, not just outside, but inside. Every time you chose to return to joy, to softness, to yourself. And as you breathe in now, you feel it, that gentle momentum of myth wrapped around the ordinary. Not dramatic, not lightning in the sky stuff, just the quiet whisper of a name carried through time. Persephone, the girl who was taken, the queen who came back, the goddess who made it okay to bloom and break, to rule and rest, to eat the seed and still return to the sun. And somewhere beneath your skin, the cycle continues. So now, here we are. The story has slowed, the journey has folded in on itself like petals at dusk. And you've walked the whole spiral with her, from sunlit meadows to underworld thrones and back again, from confusion to power, from stillness to bloom. Let your breath soften. Let the weight of your shoulders sink just a little deeper into the mattress. There's nothing left to chase. The myth has done its work. The seasons will turn again. The skies will shift. The flowers will open and close and open again. And Persephone, goddess of beginnings, endings, and the tender space between, will walk her path just like she always does. You don't have to hold the whole cycle. Just rest in the part you're in. Maybe you're blooming. Maybe you're retreating. Maybe you're somewhere in between. It's all part of the return. The wind hums through the trees. The soil breathes quietly beneath your feet. And somewhere, not too far off, a door opens. She rises. And with her, so do you. Sleep now. The world will wait.